So use case one is pretty clearly, though, the traditional workflows that I want that I know that on Fedora 29, Perl 5.26 is the default, and then maybe on Fedora 30 it'll be 5.28. And in the classic RPM world, that would just have been somebody built all of that into a Rawhide side tag, tagged it back in, and then there would be essentially a flag day where everyone would get updated, whether they wanted to or not, and whether their applications would continue to work or not. We do, I think, want to keep that behavior for the set of people that are expecting that and want to be able to continue operating the way they have traditionally. I think that there's value in not requiring, especially as we grow to having more modules. I think there's value in not requiring people to take a corrective action at every upgrade point. I think that's just going to discourage people from upgrading, which is not a great idea. So my belief is that the correct use case for traditional users is that if they have installed something from a default stream, and at an upgrade point, which is an inflection point, there's a new default stream. DNF should be aware enough to say, "Oh, hey, the default has changed. You installed the default, and you didn't install the default in some explicit way. So we'll assume that you want to continue on with the newest defaults, and you can always lock yourself down to an older one manually." Use case 2 is the important application. I have built some application that my small business, my home setup relies upon, and I know that there is a backwards incompatible change in Django 12 that means that it'll only run on older versions of Django. In this particular case, I want to be able to say, DNF install Django 10, and say, I expect that because I have selected this version of Django, that when I go to when I upgrade to Fedora 30, the rest of my system should upgrade, but that needs to stay where it is so my application doesn't break. And so that I think that we've indicated that there must be a way to explicitly say, because when I know that this is a problem, I need to be able to say, lock me on this. And finally, case 3 is the complicated application, like FreeIPA, where we've got where we may have a default stream for FreeIPA in each release, and but that default stream may change its dependent streams between upgrades. So FreeIPA on Fedora 29 might rely on dogtag or Tomcat version 9 or version 8 rather, but it may switch to relying on the Tomcat module stream 9 in Fedora 30, and so we need to account for the case where dependency where you may have selected a top level dependency on to lock on Fedora FreeIPA 4.7, but that the implicit dependencies or the implicit enablements, those things that were dependencies, may be allowed to resolve to a newer version on the upgrade, or if they can't for any complex conflict reason, then that should reject you before the upgrade, so that you can at least attempt to resolve it, or decide not to do an upgrade at that point.
Okay,
I think I did a better job describing them in the text than I just did in person, but
I think you did a good job in both cases. So I believe you are suggesting that we have two states of enablement, one implicit and one explicit. The explicit would be turned on only by the module command, be it enable or install. The implicit would be if I install a package from that module, or it's enabled as a dependency of some other module. And that's basically the gist of it.
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any other ideas for additional scenarios not covered by this? Okay, you mentioned the upgrade point. And I was mentioning Rawhide before. So what happens in Rawhide is that there's one module, not a real one, but a major module that we have that is updated automatically, and that is the platform. So what might happen is that suddenly my platform at F30 changes to F31. This will impact all the modules. Do you have any proposal how that should be solved?
Sorry, Peter, I didn't follow that. What, 31? What was the 31?
If I install Rawhide today, it's going to be I will be running platform F30 as a virtual module, and all the modules have dependency on the platform. So at some point, Rawhide will get an update, and the etcOS release will say, no, suddenly you're running platform F31. The modules installed on
Rawhide
your
doesn't
system.
really work that way. Actually, I mean, you actually wouldn't get automatically updated to anything that gives you Fedora 31 unless you intentionally don't upgrade for a period of, I think it's about 2 weeks, where Rawhide is handing you a switch over to the branched version. You don't stay on Rawhide permanently. You switch to branched.
Okay.
So I don't think that particular case is something worth optimizing for. That's essentially the case where somebody happens to go away on vacation just before the branch and comes back just after the new Rawhide is upgraded, dated past the branch switch.
Okay, that's fair. Even though I would still argue that we need a mechanism to fail safely in that situation somehow. It doesn't mean that we need to resolve the situation somehow, but we just need to not blow up.
I'm not terribly compelled to optimize for the Rawhide case, because the set of people running Rawhide and the set of people who know where to find documentation, or at least ask the right set of people for how to get out of a jam, is a circle.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it an optimization, just really staying safe.
What I mean is, I wouldn't make that a requirement. I would, if we discover that it's easy to do, we should do it. But I don't think we should actually expend effort on that unusual case.
I would still like to know what actually happens if you get into that situation, and that's trivial to test. I can just go and edit the file. So I might look into that. So do you think it would make sense to also keep the current behavior as optional and make it configurable in the DNF configuration? Let's say people who understood modularity from the beginning expect that if they enable a stream, it will stay enabled and it will not evolve.
I think that's still more or less covered by the if you have set one by default, or if you have set one explicitly, rather, that it won't change. I think that still meets that initial expectation. Whereas we basically promised right from the get-go that default streams are just going to behave like they always have, and then we realized, oh wait, that's going to have a problem with changing of the default streams. I feel like this is just meeting our original promises rather than changing our expectations.
Yeah, I cannot see any flaws in the proposal. What I would like to evaluate is that really just the 2 points I mentioned. One is that how it behaves, and whether we really need to have a mechanism to not really blow up when the platform changes, and whether it's important and how difficult it would be to cover.
I think I think that probably we just treat the platform as always implicit, and we handle it under the same logic that we're going to have to use for resolving, implicit updates. If they were, if the primary thing that pulled them in changed. I think that's probably still going to be the same logic.
Okay, so what happens? Okay, what do you suggest? Maybe you mentioned it originally, or it was in the text and I just forgot. If I have a module like FreeIPA, which depends on a default stream, this is enabled implicitly, not explicitly, that dependency, and the default for that dependency changes. Should that dependency be updated to the default, or should it stay on the previous default? That is no longer a default.
It should not be updated to a default. It should be updated to the appropriate version for what other modules depend on it. If it cannot, because there are two modules that depend on two different versions, then that should be rejected before the transaction starts. We should be able to know that ahead of time. So if FreeIPA suddenly requires Tomcat 9, but you have some other application that wants to stay on Tomcat 8, then you can't perform that upgrade because one or the other of them would be out of compliance. Would no longer match its dependencies. So that has to be resolved by the user before they can perform an upgrade.
Okay.
I would like to believe that is actually going to be the exceptional case, because I suspect that most of our users are probably going to stick with the defaults most of the time, and the set of people who are going to be selecting things, locking on things, are the set of people who already know that they have to be on that version and are probably not running more than one thing in the same container or VM. I'm not saying never, but I am saying that at least the 80% case is going to be the single application running on a system case, in which case we probably aren't going to hit these conflicts very, very often. We should account for them because we are going to hit them eventually, but often, no.
I don't dare to make any such statements, especially at this point where people are learning how it works. You can imagine that they install Fedora 29 and list the modules and, this is great. I'm going to install this module and this module and this module using the module command, and without realizing that they are going to be stuck with those streams that they installed this way and not the other way. The other way being just installing the packages.
That is a fair point, but I do feel that, given all of the communication we have made, that once you select a module, you are staying on that module until you select it, until you change by yourself. So if they make those decisions, I feel like they, it's not like we haven't been telling them that that's what's going to happen. But yes, it does mean that we may end up hitting some of these conflicts on upgrade, and I actually think that's probably for the best, because there are a few better educational tools than having something break that you can and being told how to fix it. Then that's better than documentation in most cases. As long as the important thing has to be that we have to make sure that the UX for this, when this happens, gives them some clues on, hey, these modules both depend on this, and you can't, both depend on different versions of this. We can't upgrade for both of them. You should probably move. You need to resolve this by hand. Remove one of them, or see if there's another stream of either one that complies. I think that's an optional. It's an inflection point that gives us an opportunity to educate if we write the error message well.
So I'm glad that we have Ben today. Ben, have you ever used modules? You're muted, I guess.
He's definitely never used mute buttons. Still nothing. Do do do.
Langdon's background music.
I can get you some punk or something. We still see his lips moving though. If you were closer to the camera, maybe we could read your lips.
Try holding down the space bar, Ben.
So he says in the chat that he hasn't used modules. I was going to ask him what his expectations are as a user of Fedora and the traditional packages. I realize it's just one person.
I will point out that, yeah, that wasn't exclusively my proposal. That did come after a conversation with Mary Clark, who is the DNF team's user experience representative. So this was considered by people who very specifically know how actual users think.
So Ben says that he would expect a module that he enables in Rawhide to act as any other content in Rawhide. It's not exactly what we have in the proposal. But okay.
It's not?
Well, if I enable a module, even in Rawhide, I expect that I'm going to be using that stream.
Right. So Ben, does that change your opinion? So if you're looking at the ticket, right? So use case 1 applied to Rawhide, I think is the same as applied to F29, right? Use case 2 would also apply to Rawhide. So in other words, if I go and explicitly enable a stream in Rawhide, I would expect to stay on that stream, even if, like the never-ending Node.js example, 5 explicitly enabled Node.js 10 and Rawhide releases 12, I don't expect to switch if I explicitly enabled it. Does that make sense? Okay.
We need to learn a sign language.
Or miming. I think miming is better. Maybe if you could pretend you were in a box.
Okay, yeah, I think this is pretty solid. It makes sense to me. It would obviously require quite a few changes in DNF once again.
It does?
Yes, currently DNF doesn't distinguish between enabled implicitly and enabled explicitly. It's just enabled or not.
Oh, because a default stream is enabled implicitly. You mean, and so it looks like you chose it.
It's actually not default. It's actually not enabled. You just see the RPMs, but as soon as you install anything from that module, it's enabled.
Right, and it wouldn't look any different. Okay, that makes sense.
So yeah, I don't have much to add.
So at this point, are we essentially declaring that this is the plan of record and we should pass this on as a requirements document to DNF?
I wouldn't go that far, but I would take it to the discussion with the DNF team. And also possibly review with other stakeholders that have some interest in modularity. But yeah, I would like to see this go forward, if I can speak for myself.
Are you expecting the DNF team to push back?
Yes.
There's really no proposal. There's no proposal that's not the expectation.
What do you expect them to push back on or is it just they will find something?
Well, there's the legitimate pushback on the change in effort, right? So this is increased effort because it's a change, which I would say is completely legitimate. I can't speak to whether they'll agree with the concept, for lack of a better term. So that's why there definitely should be a discussion there. But
And I definitely cannot comment on how this will impact the dependency resolutions and transaction for all the parts of the solver. For the non-modular packages, the defaults, implicitly enabled, explicitly enabled, and how it all happens. Because right now it's in one go, where we create virtual solvables for modules and streams and the artifacts and the context in them, and then select packages depending on really complex algorithms. So this might make it even more complex. And I would definitely like to hear some input from them as the experts.
so is there a way we can indicate in the ticket, in a sense, our agreement on this call with Steven's write-up? I mean, do we hit the little thumbs up button a bunch of times, or I don't know, do you want to capture that we discussed this and we kind of concluded that this is correct as far as we think?
Yeah, I will definitely comment on the ticket, and yeah, if you want to add thumbs up, go ahead.
Okay.
And are we planning to get this into DNF for Fedora 30? Is that the plan at this point?
It would be nice, but I don't think it's realistic, considering the pace of DNF development, and they have quite a lot on their agenda already. So having this implemented within the next, let's say, 4 to 5 months, and I'm not sure.
I'd really like to see this in Fedora 30, because otherwise we're going to have a whole bunch of people who install Fedora 29 that are going to have upgrade issues.
I agree with you, by just considering the reality.
When has reality ever stopped us?
It's a useful thing when you are trying to estimate the delivery.
Are there things that we're asking for that we can deprioritize for them to
No.
to make some room for it, or
No.
Okay.
It would be lovely, but no. Contact did have a proposal that I think we probably could deprioritize of rewriting the solver in C#, but I thought that was a bad idea from the get-go. So
That's not actually a real thing, is it?
No.
No, the original proposal was visualbasic.net, but
I did convince him to go to C#.
That is all a joke, right? Because let's be honest, this is not the first time that something like that has happened.
It is definitely a joke. However, I could actually see a realistic argument for Go, but that is also a joke.
You're just trying to put yourself in the mood for Halloween.
Exactly. I'm just trying to make Steven crazy.
okay. So I guess there's nothing else to discuss today.
Cool.
Okay, I'll try to find out if that recording is worth something.
So how did you do it anyway?
Oh, there's a in the 3 bullets menu in the lower right. There's a start recording, stop recording, and with the start recording, it gives you the option to record to Dropbox.
Nice. Were there any other storage?
Well, the YouTube thing.
Yeah, but
I was
nothing
aware of.
like local disk or something like that.
No, I think
Must be new.
the storing is done server side, their end, probably.
Oh, so is there a file in Dropbox right now for you?
Probably. Let me look.
We may need to stop the recording for that to appear, though.
Well, that was actually what I was asking. Like, is it being done live to Dropbox, or is it being done to some?
Apparently not. So
Yeah. Okay.
So, but well, if we're done with the topic, I can stop recording and can take a look. Maybe it'll take some time to show up. I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anybody can stop the recording. That's the beauty of Jitsi.
Oh my God! It has stats on how much we each spoke.
Yeah, it's nice.
That's neat.
Big brother. Anyway, I'll stop the recording now.
Okay.